Welcome to Two Bs on a Pod. Today we got a special guest. This one hits home. As most of our listeners know by now, we had a fight promotion on the West Coast.
West Coast Fighting Championship.
Yep, and we had the gentleman across from us fight 7 times for us. He was one of the first guys, if not probably the second guy, to go direct from our organizations to the UFC. I've seen him, in the trenches, the struggles, giving tickets, and I remember him looking at me one time, and he's like, man, I'm done if I don't get in after this. I don't know if you remember that, but...
Oh, I do.
On the show, we have UFC superstar. I think we can say that by now, 13 fights. I think at least 2 UFC main events. He's been in the top 5 of the best fighters in the world pretty consistently. So on the podcast, we have Josh Emmett.
Cool. It's great to be here.
Welcome to the show. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while, man. It's been three main events though.
Yeah, I know there was 2.
The 3 main events, a few co-mains, but yeah.
So 3. But don't forget about the West Coast Fighting Championship main events too.
Always a main event and co-main,
Yeah, right.
Yeah, we had a pretty good run together. I think we fought together. Well, I didn't fight, but I put on the organization for over 3 years. Mm-hmm. I'll never forget, I don't know if you remember this, I'm sure you remember when you got the call up to the UFC. Mm-hmm. The UFC calls me, and they're like, you were my main event for, I think it was WFC 17. Mm-hmm. And they're like, hey, I hate to do this to you. I think it was like Tuesday of our fight.
Yeah.
And they're like, we want to pull Josh to the Netherlands.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, that really sucks for us. But, and there's been many regional organizations that would be like, no, sorry, he's contracted. But I knew your struggle, and that was the one thing about our organization. We would never, ever hold anyone from getting the call of your lifetime. So I'm like, all right, well, let's do it.
Yeah. See, I never knew they actually called you guys.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that till now.
Yeah.
So it was, I remember getting the call, and then I remember telling you, too.
Yeah,
I was just like, fuck, I'm fighting on Saturday or Sunday. It was because it was in the Netherlands. And, yeah, so you were down with it, and I had a lot of teammates fighting on the card, and I was like, I'm going to refund them all, but then I'm like, they can still come and support, all the other fighters. So we did that video that, I went on there, I was like, enjoy the fights, watch me tomorrow, and I was telling everyone just to go and just support, and they understood, you know what I mean? But it was a great show, and I appreciate you for, building the platform for me to get to the UFC, because it's the exact same thing in my mind. It's just on a bigger stage. But we did all the press conferences with West Coast. We did like all the media days and things like that. And it was like, and then the fights were competitive. I was fighting UFC vets. I was fighting some of the top talent on the region that weren't in the UFC. So I feel like it was a building block to get me to the biggest show, and nothing changed once I got there. It's just more eyes on me, but I feel like you guys prepped me for that. So I am appreciative of that, and I always talk about the West Coast days.
Yeah, and I think the fight I'll always remember is the Christian Giagos fight. So Christian Giagos, just released by the UFC, he lost like a couple sketchy decisions. They cut him. And I couldn't get anyone to fight you. I think you were 11-0 at this point. You've cleared everyone in California. We flew guys in. I had Jeremy Luchow as my matchmaker, and I strategically took him on board because I knew he had alliances with Jason House and Iridium, which Iridium had a ton of guys, and they will fight anyone, and their mentality is, you can't clear out the region, you're not built for the UFC. So we got him in there. You said yes right away, but I couldn't believe Christian Giagos takes Josh Emmett 11-0 in Sacramento, his first fight back from the UFC. But I tell you what, guess who's back in the UFC right now?
Yeah, no, so is he, and that was he was a good guy, and that's my mentality too. I'm like, if I would have lost a fight, I would have been done fighting too. That was my whole mentality, just because like my age and where I was at. I wanted to get in the UFC. It was that or nothing. So it's like, if I lost as an amateur, I was done fighting, because I had my first amateur fight when I was 26. And then, I was grateful for that. Went in there, gave him his first knockout loss. And then that kind of, propelled me to the UFC or put me more on the radar. It was always win one more fight and then you'll get in. And I heard that so much, so that's why I was going to hang it up too. But then, I got the call 4 days before our show, and it was perfect timing.
Well, I'll never forget, we were doing tickets with the Giagos fight, and you were I think you were living at your buddy's house with your wife, and you just kind of had your head down. You're like, this is bullshit. I'm 11-0. I've cleared out everybody. Why don't they want me? Like, this is it. This is my last fight. And you were just kind of pissed.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, I think you were going to become a cop. Is what you told me at the time. And it was mixed of feelings when you got the call to the UFC, right? I was like, oh, finally, I mean, this guy deserves it more than anyone. But then I'm like, holy shit, I have a fight in 5 days. But we made it happen. But the thing that people don't really know about you, you had a really tough upbringing. You're very well spoken. You're really put together. So not too many people know. I would say you're more on the quiet side, right? You keep to yourself. And you've had a really rough upbringing, right? Like you had I remember reading something where the cops were growing up right at your house every day. Your brother had a pretty bad addiction. Your mom was trying to deal with it. You were trying to deal with it. And I always wonder, all that built-up anger, does it come out with that right hook? Is that where because when you get in the cage, it's a different animal. You turn on that switch. Does some of that come out, you think?
No, I don't think in the actual cage. It's just something that I think molded me into who I am, just from I don't know. Everyone has their own story and their own so it's not like anything that I try to have like a sob story. Just when people ask me, I was like, it was tough. Like it was tough. Single mom, and it was like my older brother had a addiction problem. He also had like mental health issues and stuff like that. And it was just wrong crowd. It was just a little bit of everything. I could write a book on this and people would be amazed by it. Just like the things that I don't think any kid should have seen or went through at my age. I was scared all the time. It was tough, but that's why I found martial arts at a young child, like with Kung Fu. And then I got into wrestling at a young age, and just to be there to protect my mom if I needed to, so it definitely molded me into who I am with, just difficult times and overcoming adversity. And when I go into a cage and I fight someone in a controlled environment, I'm like, this type of stuff doesn't scare me at all. There's not a lot of things that scare me, but yeah, I can flip the switch, So a lot of people, when they actually know me, they're like, I can't believe you fight, And then if they watch me fight, like even Vanessa can see it. My wife, like when I'm in the octagon or the cage, like she just watches me and she knows, like, it's like when I get in there and right before he says like, are you ready to fight? And I'm pacing back and forth, she can just see like the demeanor in my face just kind of change. And she knows like, oh, okay, that's Josh. And we joke around saying it's like not my alter ego, but it's like a completely different person. You know what I mean? And I can do that because it's work. Like they're trying to hurt me and embarrass me in front of the world. And, everything I'm trying to work for, it's like I hope me and my opponent both go home, injury free, and because we're both trying to accomplish the same thing. At least I think we are trying to win the fight and become a world champion. Otherwise, you're in this for the wrong reason. And so I can flip the switch, and I'll choose me every single time.
Yeah, no, I think that's fantastic, because it's one of those things that life's going to throw a bunch of shit at you, especially when you're young, and it really does determine kind of how you react to it, what you're going to go on, because some people see the crap and allow it to take over. They become a part of that crap. It seemed like you were like, I want to as far away from this kind of stuff as possible. You said wrestling was a great outlet, and I was, reading up on you. It said that you had been wrestling for something like, 12, 14 years, and I'm like, wait a minute, how does this add up? High school, college. So when did you start wrestling? When did that really become something that was a hobby more so, and then become like something that you really like doing more so than just a hobby?
I played sports my entire life. Like growing up, one of my really good friends growing up, Paul Avery, his father was, he had 3 boys, and it was a big wrestling family. So they wrestled, but then he was also my baseball coach as well, an all-star coach. So he kept telling me like, you're going to come out and wrestle, just because, he knew I was athletic, and I was like this short, stocky, strong kid in elementary school. And, I didn't want to wear the singlet. I'm like, I'm not wearing that singlet. I'm not going to go do this wrestling stuff. And then I finally went out, and I think I was in like 7th grade. So I was pretty young. And first year wrestling, I was just this short, strong kid. I would head and arm everyone and just pin people. So I went like 14-0 my first year. And then through middle school, I did that. And then I was, as a freshman, I was the only freshman on varsity. I did that for 4 years and wrestled at the junior college level. And then I went into Ultimate Fitness.
You forgot about, your next step was you and alma mater and Danny Castillo.
Oh, no, because this is the thing.
In between you did that.
I went to Sac City. I wrestled in 03 and 05. Ooh. Uriah was coming in, and he was passing out flyers at one of the meets at Sac City. And I was always a fan of the sport, always like watched it, back in 99 when I was a freshman with my friend, when they only had like 1 or 2 pay-per-views a year. And I was like, I could do this, And so I went in there, I started going to some of the classes, like just the general classes. And Uriah invited me to pro practices. I did that for a while. And then during this whole time, I was getting offers to go wrestle at like schools on the East Coast, Midwest. I didn't want to leave home. I was young. And so I went to Menlo College. So then that's when I was like, I want to do this MMA stuff, but I want to get my degree in case fighting doesn't work out. I also want to wrestle at the 4-year level so I get better at wrestling, because I know it'll transition into the MMA game. So I did just exactly that. And I went down there from 07 to 2010. And then as soon as I graduated, I came back and trained for a few months and had an amateur fight.
It was amazing how many, we were talking to Danny Castillo about all the guys and girls. I think it was a girl came out of
Esparza
came out of Menlo. Such a small school. Did they ever ask you to come back or anything like that? Have they reached out to you?
No, I've gone back, and I've kept in touch with the coaches, and he's the vice president of the college. He used to be the head wrestling coach, Keith Spataro, and there's Joey Martinez. But yeah, no, I've kept in touch with them over the years, and I've gone back here and there, but. There is a lot more. So in our small private college in the Silicon Valley, I want to say, so it was Danny Castillo, he made it to the UFC, Carlos Esparza, Ashley Evans Smith, myself, Cody Gibson, he was in the UFC, now he's on the Ultimate Fighter right now, Ryan Benoit, and then I want to say there was one other person, but then also Lee Morrison. He fought on like a regional scene and then fought in Bellator and stuff like that, but he didn't make it to the UFC. But there were so many people. I want to say 7 or 8 people that made it to the UFC.
That's incredible.
Now this tiny little
and you
college.
had, I believe his name was Nate Jackson. He's an NFL guy. Played for the Niners and Broncos. I think maybe the Niners. But wow, what an amazing talent at such a small school.
Yeah.
And you think about Menlo and Menlo Park in the Bay Area. You have Stanford, Cal, San Jose State, like all these schools. It's crazy that this little kind of bubble, because you're in a bubble when you're out there. If you try to live anywhere else, it's super expensive. But I want to go on your journey, right? You man, it looks like every time you fought for us, it was something broken. I broke my hand. You were riddled with injuries, right? When you were coming up. What was that like? Because how many years were you fighting? How many was it? Gosh, it was a while, right? Because you had your first fight and you got injured back in, was it 2011, 2012?
Yeah, I had my pro debut was 2011. It was in Uriah's gym. I fought in the damn boxing ring that we spar in. He just clears everything out and puts chairs up. So I fought some guy in there, and then my second pro fight was with you, and I just kind of kept it going. I did fight. I fought once in King of the Cage, I believe.
I wasn't happy about that. But.
Yeah, King of the Cage. Had to fight up a weight class. I needed to keep fighting, make some money.
Yeah. But it's hard to get you a fight. I mean, especially when you became 6-0, 7-0, 8-0.
Yeah.
Every number we added to that, it just got harder and harder.
Yeah. Guys just had stuff coming up that week, I mean, just it wasn't going to work out.
It wasn't going to work.
Oh, well, you got someone else I could do it, but yeah.
I was willing to pay people. I was like, I didn't even care about my purse. I was like, I just want either a good person on my resume. I'm like, I'll give him my purse because I wasn't making a whole lot. But it is crazy to think about all that. Like I'm like fighting Christos Giagos, UFC vet, and I'm fighting for like my purse. I'm like, we would have got fight of the night in there. I would have got knockout of the night. So that would have been an extra $100K in bonuses plus the purse. I'm like, it is kind of cool to like zoom out and see like where I've come from, like how far I've come. But it is tough to realize that while I'm in the moment, because it's just work.
A grind.
Yeah,
man.
it's just like
it's you're making, and I knew that. I wasn't making,
Yeah, no, I know.
There's a couple fights where we did okay, but no one was making money. Like we didn't have the UFC Fight Pass deal, which, man, I wish we could have that. I wish we were in a casino, but we funded everything.
Yeah.
So it was a grind. Like you saw me during fight day. I was. I was in the bathroom. I was, in the back, like away from everything, because I just had so much anxiety. But I don't know if you remember that fight. Remember the big bubble that was in the cage that night with the Giagos fight? I don't know if you remember. Mm-hmm. It was hot as usual. And you were in the cage too. Tim was our announcer.
One of those August fights that we had, where it would just be like 110 in there. Yeah.
And there was a huge bubble.
Oh, on the canvas.
On the canvas.
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, yeah, it was big, and they're like, the commission come to me, they're like, you got to fix this, so I'm yelling at my cage guy, but they almost called that fight. They almost
no way.
Didn't make, I think it was the Co, and the Mitchell was on, it was at the Mitchell-Griffin fight, too. That was the King
of Sacramento, that would have been the next fight, yeah.
He was the main event, I was the co-main event.
Isn't that crazy to think about, you were the co-main event?
See, I always think I should have been the main event on that, too.
I mean, that ticket right there, I mean, that feeling, like I was just going to say, I was going to ask you, you fought for us a few times, but I felt like that energy was different that night, that felt like almost a UFC card that we were sponsoring, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, it was insane. And I'll be honest, it was one of the first times where I was kind of nervous for you, because I had seen you fight quite a few times, and I always liked how, you were professional, respectable. You did all the things right, so you'd always bring a big group of fans in. So I'm rooting for you in there, and I hate to admit that, but it's true. You start rooting for certain people, you want to see them do well, and I know that you're aspiring to go to the UFC, and so when I'm seeing that, like, oh my gosh, this guy's putting up a good fight, like this is scary, and so. I wonder, with the roar of the crowd going on, like this guy's actually putting up, what's that like there in the middle of that ring when you're feeling that, when someone's giving you a real good fight and you got to find, different ways to go about it. Like what's that like in there with a guy like that?
Yeah, no, I like it. Honestly, it's like it's weird just because it's like I've talked about this before. It's like when I actually fight, it's like the only time, even though it's so chaotic in there, it's like that's the only time I'm at peace, because I'm not thinking about anything, and like it's the only time that I can truly live in the moment. Other than that, I'm not thinking about what I have to do or do this or what, just you're only thinking about the guy in front of you, and I've competed my entire life at a high level, so it's like it was no different. And then afterwards, I'm like, I actually enjoyed that, to a certain extent. You know what I mean? I'm happy I got my hand raised, and how it propelled me to my next move. But it's just I think that's just maybe the first part, because I was always going in there and beating these guys pretty easy, but then I was actually in a fight, but I actually enjoyed it because I got to test myself. And my whole thing was I always wanted to fight tough guys, because it's like I wanted to get in the UFC. I didn't want to have my first fight in the UFC, and that's what a lot of people you see nowadays, they like pad their record, they get to the UFC and they get the hell beat out of them, and they're like, what is this, because they've never, like, you got to develop yourself properly. But a lot of guys are like, oh, I want to get to 3-0 and get on Dana White's Contender Series so I can get in the UFC. I'm like, don't do that. Like, there's no need for that. You know what I mean? Like,
don't get embarrassed on national television because you fought three guys that didn't know what they were doing, that were mechanics that night, or were working on the cage, like you say.
Or building the cage.
All right, we're good. All right, let me go ahead and fight this guy real quick. 145, sure, that'll do.
I can do that. I'm 180.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, sure.
No, but I do got to talk about one thing, though, that, like, so that's sort of the highest of the highs right there, because that fight, that was one, in my mind, that was one of the best fights that I saw as ringside there. You know, it was great back and forth action. I felt that you deserved the win, and you got the win. It was fantastic. You know, he was really
knocked him out.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Though. Like, but that's what I'm saying. Like sometimes the guys who deserve to win don't get the win. You know, and so it was one of those things where I was like, all right, good. It went the way we'd hoped. But the fight before that was a little bit different. You were fighting Brandon Keeper Rossetti for the title. And in the ring, it was ruled a no decision. It was, you know, that knee, that was kind of a questionable thing there. I know later on you got the win, so I'm curious, what's that like in there after you gave your all, you feel like you won the fight, and then to be told, first of all, it doesn't count, and then later to be told, actually, you did get the win. I mean, when did you find out, and what was that like?
Yeah, that was hard. That kind of sucked, you know, because it's like my goal was to be the West Coast champion, and obviously I ended up doing that, but it's... I fought a perfect fight, and I think that was at the 5th round or 4th round.
5th round.
Okay, 5th round. Yeah, and it just happened like that. I was just pissed. You know, I was pissed. I think the crowd was pissed. Like all my friends and family and fans, like they were pissed. And you know, I had my good buddy Johnny. He was like throwing shit in the cage, and it was just hard. But then, like after I appealed it, and then the California Athletic Commission reviewed it, and they're like, oh yeah, you should have went to the scorecards. But I think the judges just maybe they weren't briefed properly on the rules. But since it was after the championship rounds, and they would go back to the scorecards, and I won every single round, so I should have just got my unanimous decision and awarded the belt right then. But it is what it is. I still, in my mind, I feel like I won that fight, and because I did, and then I got the belt. Maybe it was like 2 weeks after or something. They reviewed all the tapes and went through a bunch of stuff, and then Andy, they tried to do some little celebration thing at the gym. I thought it was like the lamest thing ever, and they came down and like gave me the belt and tried to make something special out of it. But it was nice, but it was just weird.
So, I didn't know that you had to appeal it. I thought it was something that they just reviewed and were like, oh, by the way, you won. But like, so you had to go through the process of actually saying, hey, take a look at this stuff because I won this fair and square, and I do deserve the title. So,
and a lot of like, obviously CSAC was there, and like some of the people that work for the commission, they were just telling them like, no, they should do this, they should do this. I think it was Lee Palmer at the time. He was telling them what they should do, and he was trying to call Andy Foster because he was out of town that night, and so I think he was at some Bellator event, so it was super loud. He couldn't hear on the phone, and so then it just kind of went away like that. And then he's like, "No, you should have went to the scorecard." So he was telling him right then, and we were in the cage for it felt like 20 minutes. I was sitting there and everyone's booing, and like I was like, man, there's about to be something crazy go down.
Yeah,
here.
Trust me, as the announcer, that was one of my least favorite times having to go in there because first of all, I know everyone's pissed. Like you say, I was going to say it was one of the few times being in there where I got stuff thrown at me, and I'm like, guys, I had nothing to do with this. I'm just telling you the information, but. That's tough because, like you say, this was a one-sided fight. It should have been a victory, and then all of a sudden, technicality, something like that can happen. I mean, that's kind of the worst thing to me about fighting is that something like that can happen, a slip, and then all of a sudden a fight that, should have been a victory is no longer one. But I'll be honest, a lot of us didn't kind of seem to know what to do a situation, and I'm asking, like,
which is understandable, and it is what it is. Yeah. Like, and even that, I was just super upset at the time. But then a few days go by, it's like, I don't know. I was just reacting different. I was just so pissed. But then now I'm like, maybe I was acting like a jackass, and I was just pissed at the time. But yeah, it is like I'm grateful for every little route that in every path that I like traveled through West Coast and up until the UFC and kind of. Even where I'm at,
See, on my end, I don't think it's understandable. It's like that's their job, And I had a great relationship with the commission, but that's what they do, But I think we were, a California regional West Coast organization, and no regional promotion ever really put on a 5-round fight, right? So
I guess so.
that was probably, they weren't expecting that, and they were at Bellator the same night. But yeah, that bothered me because it goes on us, right? It always goes on me. I'm getting yelled at. I'm like, dude, I pay the commission. We do exactly what the UFC does. And I talked about this with Max Griffin, who was on a few weeks ago, and the judging is just horrendous. I'm sure you've had some terrible decisions. Everyone's had terrible decisions. It seems like in the UFC, and I just don't understand why they don't train their own judges and get them sanctioned in every state And so you just have traveling judges that are hired by the UFC, just like the MLB hires umpires. The NFL hires referees, have basically a commission overseeing them as well. But it's like Dana's a really smart guy, right? I'm sure he's already thought of this, but I don't know what the roadblocks are.
Yeah. Who knows? Because I also feel like that. Like I agree, there should be like a criteria, because there's a lot of people, like even like the fight that I just had, like I didn't agree with the scorecards. I thought it was more of a competitive fight, besides obviously the fourth round and stuff like that. But there should be a criteria. Maybe you should have to have some type of like a certain belt in jiu-jitsu or something. Maybe competed in some type of martial arts, or at least done, like some of the people have no idea what they're doing. And then I do feel like if he has like his own set of judges, then it's like conflict of interest, because it's like they're paid by the UFC, but then also there's a referees union, right? So maybe get a judges union, and then unionize the UFC too.
The NBA does it, the NFL does it, MLB does it. Why doesn't the UFC do it?
But and those are also, they all unionized as well,
That's
so
a whole nother thing.
I think it's just like a sticky subject, but it is. I think something has to change with the judges, because a lot of times too, you're screwing someone's like livelihood too, because if one of the judges scores it to someone else and it's like you won that fight, but on the scorecards you didn't and you lost, you get half your pay. Pay. It's like it's horrible. If it was at least like a guaranteed money, of course it still sucks to lose. Like everyone wants to win, but at least if you're making guaranteed money, it's like, fuck, I'm pissed that I lost, but it's like, okay, it's a little different. I don't know. I guess it's just different in everyone's
What
mind.
management are you with now?
Vayner Sports.
And where are they out of?
They're kind of all over the place. So they have a place in LA, New York. My manager, Lloyd Pearson, he lives in Dallas. So I was with another management team, and then he was there, and then I followed him when he just had he'd been talking to Gary and AJ Vaynerchuk, who own Vayner Sports for years, and then he decided it was perfect fit, and he made the move. And I liked everyone at the previous management company I was with, but I was there because of him. And Lloyd's such a good guy, and he's done a lot for me, and he really cares about his athletes, and he'll go to bat for them. So I'm like, yeah, I'm following him wherever he goes, and I've been with them and created relationships with AJ and Gary, and it's a good place for me.
Who other fighters do they have in their organization? Is it just UFC guys, or is it MLB?
So they were originally they managed a lot of people in the NFL. I think they just started, or it was NFL and MLB, and then they just started managing NBA players. Cool. And then Lloyd is the one that he created the entire MMA division, so that's kind of his thing. And then they also have esports. It's like, man, I should have got into that. Those guys are making millions of dollars for winning video game tournaments. I'm like, I got into the wrong career.
Do you try to negotiate more upfront monies? It seems like it's always a show and win the same amount. Have you ever tried to get more? Because I every once in a while you'll see just a full guarantee, like a veteran. They don't get a win bonus. That's just a full upfront. Have you tried to negotiate that, or? Yeah,
and that's kind of like what we're working on, and that's where, because it's like no matter what, you're gonna get the same fight. Like I'm gonna fight the same way. It's like it's just unfortunate when you show and win, and it's like I'm not trying to fight any harder. Like I'm trying to knock this person out with every punch I throw, and I personally will never give up. Like a lot of people will just give up and quit. Like I won't do that. So you're gonna get the same Josh Emmett fight no matter what. But yeah, I think everyone's different. That's the thing, because we're not on like the same like playing field. You know what I mean? It's like everyone is just, it's like does different deals and stuff. It's kind of crazy, but it is like real estate. You got to find your comps and stuff in your weight class, and where you kind of stack up with these guys, even though no one is the same. It's kind of hard to do that, but it's kind of like it's just a tough thing to do. But yeah, I would like to get more guaranteed money.
And so you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but what's the most amount of money you've made in a night with win bonus, the apparel deal, sponsors, like what's the most of money you've cleared in one fight? Because I remember when you fought for me 7 times,
It's like
money was
$1,000.
always an issue. Yeah. Well, you sold a ton of tickets.
Yeah. So it's
you
like,
clear like 8-9 grand maybe. But what was your altogether? What was the biggest? Do you remember? I'm sure you remember, right?
yeah, no, no, it's a good. It's just tough because it like grossing it's a lot, or it seems like a lot, but then by the time I, travel expenses and flights and hotels and Airbnbs and management, coaches, dietitians, camp, net is not the best. You know what I mean? So on paper, it seems good, but it's just, I feel like even when I was fighting for you, it's like, and I would get sponsors and sell shirts and hustle. I was backstage when I was fighting, and I was still making calls, running out, dropping off tickets. And then my best friend Johnny, he's running around dropping off shirts to people. And even after that, all said and done, I think the most I made for you was like 15,000 cash, but that's sponsors, t-shirts, everything. You know what I mean?
That's not bad for the region.
bad
I'll
at
take
all.
it.
But that's me like hustling. But what was my purse?
Yeah.
like if
Yeah, you guys
fighting Christos, like a UFC vet, and we had that fight, and it's like I made $1,000 for that. So it's kind of crazy, like my purse. But
was it 1-1 or
No,
it's 15-15?
okay.
I think.
I don't think I got 15. I think it's just one. It was just 1,500 straight for that one.
I think you did it. I don't know.
I'll refer back to my notes and check.
But either way, it's peanuts,
No,
right?
but that's
Yeah.
crazy. Like just to fight him, but then that's why I'm trying to hustle and make as much as I can.
Well, he fought for 1-1,
oh wow,
which is just insane. He made $1,000 that night fighting one of the best guys in the world.
That's crazy. No, but that's where I'm like, I go back and I can see like how far I've come. But then at the end of the day, even in the UFC, it'll still never be enough, for what we do. Like people don't really understand, you know what I mean? Like, because they'll see those numbers and they'll be like, oh, you made as much as someone makes in a year. But I'm like, this is my full-time job. Like, and it's with overtime every week. And it's like, I only get paid when I fight. And then obviously all the taxes and self-employment taxes and things like that. It's like, and then like what we put our body through, it's like, it would be nice if there was some type of pension. Like I always refer to like the NFL. Like I'm like, at least if you play in the league 4 years, you become vested with the NFL, you get a pension at the end of the you're pretty much good. And then every year you play thereafter, your pension goes up and you have medical benefits. I wish it was on a smaller scale for the UFC, something like that, if you hit a certain amount of fights. But
so what is your purse now? Like you're dodging that question. I want to know how much you're making. It's public knowledge, right? The 50 grand.
Yeah, the
performance bonus
and stuff. But it's like on the tiered system, it's like I think Venom, I've had 13 fights. I think it's 11 grand for my sponsors. And then it's not that, it's
and
not
what was
that
your
much.
purse in the last one?
It's 6 figures,
Nice.
But
he doesn't want to. He doesn't want to let it go.
IRS is paying attention. I don't blame you.
figures.
Why are you going to give that away? You mean 5 figures? What are you talking about? This 6
I made
figures for?
$10,000.
$50. $50 under the
But
table.
you're right. As a professional athlete, I talked to Max the same thing, and it's even like scrubs in the NFL practice squad guys.
Yeah.
We had a guy on the show, Eric
800 grand.
Bakhtiari. Yeah, he was making, I think, was it 30? This was a few years back, but he made 30 grand a week when he was on
Game
active
checks.
roster, and then back to the practice squad, back and forth. But imagine an NBA.
Yeah, and I think it's even higher now because even like you're saying a few years ago, like I want to say like the minimum, the league minimum was something ridiculous. It's like I'll do that all day, just practice, and that's not even a contact sport or combat. It's like you're scrimmaging and playing basketball, or football. It's like, that's different. But still, if they had their shells on and they're just running routes, it's still not. I'll do that all day.
Well, and you get paid even if you're injured. That's the thing. Like you put your body through it, and then if you can't fight, I'm sorry. That's why it was World Fight League, I believe it is. They were trying to start up for the last few years. They're trying to get some serious oil money. We'll leave it at that. Is Darren Owen. He was in charge of World Series of Fighting, now PFL.
Okay.
And what they are trying to do is create a league. So think of the NBA and the UFC combined. So you have a team. So say Sacramento has a team. You have 5 or 6 weight classes, 2 fighters per weight class. You go and fight Dallas for the week. You fight their guys, and whoever can go, if they're whoever's healthiest, so they're 35 is injured, the other one fights, and you fight all throughout the U.S., and then you have at the end you have a championship. But what I like about that is like Uriah, right? Uriah, he has his name, all that, but when Uriah leaves, there's no legacy. There is a legacy for him as a fighter, but there isn't. We can't root for Uriah anymore, right? So if he was the Sacramento Cobras or whatever it was, we can still root for the Sacramento Cobras because that's a terrible name, but you know what I mean, though.
Yeah.
If you have
part of it,
it's a team, and I think it's going to take years. It's going to take a shit ton of money. I'm talking some Saudi 50 million, maybe $1 billion, kind of what LIV did with golf.
Okay.
Something like that, but that's what he's trying to propose.
Is it an entire team or just two? Is it like all the weight classes?
It's all the weight classes in each city. So he has like 8 cities. Vegas is one of them, LA, and you get paid salaries. Yeah. So it's like, hey, we just signed Josh Emmett for 2 years, $10 million, and if you break your hand, you break your orbital,
like guaranteed money.
You still get paid.
Wow!
So I love it. I just feel the UFC has created just I guess a juggernaut of a organization that it's going to take a shit ton of money. I'm talking big time oil money, and it's going to take 5, 6, 7 years of pumping money into it. But I love the idea. I love the idea of having a team, and you can root for that team, like the 49ers, right? He's a big 49er fan, right?
Yeah, buddy.
And
it doesn't matter who's on the team. I'm rooting for the team. So yeah.
So that's what MMA is missing. So I love what he's doing.
They used to have, was it the IFL back in the day?
Yeah, but it was
the teams.
Yeah, but it was peanuts, right?
Yeah, like the pay, and I like the pay and all that, and the compensation. But it's because for me, at the end of the day, it's like I put my whole life into this, and it's like I want it to be all worth it when I like decide to hang him up. You know what I mean? And it's like. If I retired now, it's like, shit, I gotta go start working. I gotta find a job and reach out to a lot of my connections. I can go get a job and just do something, but it'd be a desk job or something. But I want to be passionate.
You shouldn't have to. You're an elite professional athlete. 13 fights. You've dedicated your whole life to it. You shouldn't have to. You shouldn't have to worry about that. You should be 40 years old, it's a couple of years, it's coming, and you should be retired and not have to worry about money.
And that's why I go back to all these pension things, even just on a smaller scale, you know what I mean? But it's, who knows, like hopefully in the future, I think something will change, Well,
I saw you at the Capitol with Max. What were you guys doing there? What was?
Well, that was just trying to, we were just kind of advocating for the fighter pension fund.
So that's why you were there.
But exactly. And that's only in California, but I do feel like if California starts, a lot of states will follow, and it has nothing to do with like the promotion, or it is the promotions, but it would be every person that actually buys a ticket, $1 from each ticket would go to this fund, and they would invest it and stuff like that. But you have to have 13, I think it's 14 pro fights actually in California, so I'm not even eligible for that.
Wow.
For that, but it's like I think this is the right step, and this. It's a move in the right direction, and for the future of the sport and the younger kids that are doing this and the fighters, it's
how many fights do you have in California? You got 7 with us.
No, that's I was 9-0 when I got in the UFC, but I think
thought you were 11-0.
No, I was 9-0.
9-0.
Yeah, I was 9-0. So I have 11 fights in California because I had 2 in the UFC. I fought at Golden One twice, in 2019 and 2016. So but maybe I'd be closer because they say it's like 38 rounds or something, and that's scheduled fight. So since I did fight Yagos, that was a 5-round fight scheduled, and then Rossetti, so maybe I will be eligible, but it's the
Matt Ryan wasn't 5 rounds.
yeah. My first one with you guys. Because
poor kid. I was like, man, just don't hurt him.
I know. I did feel bad. I felt bad for a handful of them. But
I think that was a last minute replacement. And I was like, oh man. Then Noah Schnabel. You had a couple guys where I'm like, I think I went up to you before the fight. And so what happens, on the regional level is sometimes injuries happen, you know, and we have to, especially
supposedly,
in the beginning of your career, we can get those guys, you know, the last minute guys to come in and fight you, but you're way out of their caliber. But I remember going to you, I'm like, dude, just, you know, don't kill this guy too much. But then obviously when you get 7-0, 8-0, 9-0, it's a different story. The commission won't allow that, but they have to do something. It's a shame that these guys, I mean, you main event 3 times, you're elite fighter, and you're stressing about money.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have to be stressing about money.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and health. And that's the other big thing is that, and that's why I'm glad that it's starting to happen, because this is the big thing. It takes someone doing this. You know, we talk about, well, getting paid like these other athletes. You got to remember, these organizations have been around well over 100 years, some of them, you know. When did baseball players start getting paid? It wasn't until the 60s. That is 70 years into the Major League Baseball actually being a thing. That was the first time where you actually had free agents where they can make their own thing. So it takes time, but it took a strong union to break these owners, because they could just say, okay, the hell with you guys. We'll put a bunch of scabs out there and we'll do that. And I think that's one of the toughest things about fighting and trying to get this on board. You know, I've noticed that one of the big things is that the other sports have a yearly championship, right? Fighting doesn't typically have that. It likes having this revolving, rotating champion, because what happens when your champion breaks his hand and can't fight for a year? You know what I mean? Can't fight for 5 months. It's tough. And so
vacate the belt.
Right? And that's what I'm saying. And so I do think that's one of the main reasons why the UFC and other fighting organizations do what they do, where they have this sort of, you know, a big event, you know, once a month or so, and a few other smaller events in between, because you're doing it at times when there's not a lot of other stuff going on. So, hey, let's bring some attention our way, because once football season starts, it's hard to have a match going on like when you're dealing with some big fights and big games and things like that. But I do think that that's a step in the right direction, is getting these guys, you know, taken care of for the long term, because it is one of those things that, you know, people don't understand. You're talking about, I'm getting, you know, what I make in a year in one fight, because I'm also having to nurse an injury for about 6 months after the fact. I can't work while that's happening, you know, like what's the thing you could do? Maybe you can coach or something. I don't know.
And there's no money in that.
No.
So it is tough, because it's like, we're dealing with, we don't have medical insurance. Like if you get hurt in the actual fight, like the UFC is great. They'll take care of everything. And they've been great with me, but it's like, I don't have medical insurance. So if something else happened, it's like, I'm just relying on me being healthy and living a healthy lifestyle, that luckily I don't have to go to the doctor, you know what I mean? But there are a lot of times that you go into fights and people have had things going on with them, you know what I mean? But it's like, you have to fight, because otherwise you don't get paid, you know? So it is tough. But
I mean, at least you're making more than you used to, you know what I mean? It's but I feel like everyone always says that is, you know, more money, more problems. You know, there's always, no matter how much money you make, you want bigger things. But I thought it was cool, like when you first started making a decent amount of money, right, to kind of relax a little bit, you built a house for your mom. How was that feeling to be able to do that? Because I know your mom's your biggest fan. What was that like?
That was cool. It was awesome. Like it happened because she was actually renting from my in-laws for a long time. They sold their winery, and then they needed a place to go, and so we were looking at, you know, places for my mom, and obviously just the market's so high right now, and it's like she couldn't afford that, so we were looking at like modular places, and I was just like, her being on a fixed income, and then, you know, I couldn't have my mom living in some of these places, so I was like, I'm not going to do this. So I just talked, my wife's an interior designer, and we talked like, what are we going to do? And then we're just like, let's build a place in our backyard. So we just kind of used all of our resources. We moved my mom in. She lived with us from, I want to say, March of 2022 to, you know, December is when we finished her project. But we started, you know, the end of 2021 going to, you know, talking to architects, and my wife designed the entire thing with the architect. Then we went through permits and all that, and we demoed our entire yard, just clean slate in April, and it just starting the process and built a house. It's a 1-bedroom house in the backyard, and it's nice. It's like we jokingly, we're like, it's nicer than like ours. Like we'll switch with my mom, but it's like just nice appliances, just everything. It's like it's the best, and she's super grateful, and it's just nice being able to do that for my mom, and she's right there safe, and you know what I mean, it's like if we do travel or something like that, she can watch the dog. So
that's awesome.
It's no, but yeah, we're all happy about it, and it's just a win-win. So it's.
Does she come to the fights at all?
Yeah. So she's been she used to never come to fights just because she couldn't.
I don't think I've ever met her.
She couldn't watch it. And then this is the whole story. She came to my first amateur fight because she could barely watch me wrestle, and then she was supporting me. So then I fought this. My first fight was in a bar in Fremont. I think it was Saddle Rack.
Oh, yeah.
So you know, because you know, yeah.
We
So,
know all
You have to
about
ride the bull, and then you have to fight the person after,
Yeah.
right?
Did you get a haircut at all?
Yeah,
I was gonna
right.
say,
Have you seen? They used to have at the South. We grew up going there.
Yeah,
God,
so I
we-
knew you guys would know.
Oh yeah, and they used to have this barber chair where they put you back down, they feed you shots.
Oh, really?
spin
So-
you around, all kinds of
Yeah,
stuff.
my friend-
Shake your head, yeah.
My friend Jason, who I think ran into you at a concert, a reggae concert, and he was
Okay.
filming. He's I've known him since I was 8 years old, and
Loud dog.
he would always go. He's like, "Man, your hair looks good, but you might need a little trim, And then he'd carry me over to the barber, and they'd feed shots in me,
Yeah.
But yeah, we know all about the Saddle Rack.
But I didn't get to experience any of that because it was like they cleared everything out.
They
It was
had
like,
a fight there.
It was like Uriah's gym. They
Oh,
cleared
jeez.
everything out and they put a cage in the center. So
That's
that was my.
awesome.
I could see that.
That
'Cause
was
they have
my-
that big kind of dance floor
They
out
had
there.
a
So
stage, yeah. So it must have been that
Oh,
there was
wow.
a stage up there,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and then like the bars were over here. So like my first fight, they tried to like set me up. That's how shady this game is. It was supposed to be with like a guy from AKA, like their next big thing. So I fought like the people on the stage were Cain Velasquez, Josh Koscheck. It was like
Josh Thompson probably
Phil
was there.
Baroni.
Oh yeah.
Like all these huge name guys. They were there to watch their guy, and I knocked him out in the second round bad. But with that, I knocked him out. My mom came, and she was just freaking out, and then his mom was sitting in front of her, and she was crying because he was unconscious for a long, long time, and it was bad. So my mom was really freaking out, so she couldn't come to fights after that. But then leading up to the fight, she was always super nervous. Fight week, even worse, and then fight day, she's just like, can't think because she's so nervous. And then while I'm at the at the venues and stuff fighting, she doesn't know what's going on, so she's just like pacing around. And then I would always call her backstage, "Hey mom, I'm okay," blah blah blah. But then she started coming to fights maybe when I was like, I don't know, maybe it was like when I was 6 or 7 and 0. She came to a few West Coast fights, and she would just be in the back. And then, but she knew I was okay.
Me too.
Because I'm in the yeah. She
I was
knew
hiding with her, probably.
She knew I was okay because like I wasn't fighting, but she was still freaked out. And then of course when I'm walking out, then it just got worse and worse, and it's a brutal thing. But she does come to the fights, except when like if it's super far out of the country, she typically doesn't, but she comes anywhere in our country.
Speaking of going out of the country, so yeah, you were fighting, all regional for a long time, and then your first fight in the UFC is in the Netherlands. You've gotten to go to a lot of cool spots. I noticed, Manitoba, Canada, and Perth, Australia, and I do want to talk about that real quick because I think one of the coolest things happened there where you were able to meet your namesake. I think that's awesome. My name is Tim Brown, for those of you that don't know, and I've always wanted to meet the Tim Brown, the football player, and so I'm like, that's going to happen. Hey, we're looking for you, TB, on 2Bs1 Pod. But yeah, there's a Josh Emmett. That's a 2 Michelin star chef out there in, what was it, Perth or New Zealand? Yeah, I saw he was out in New Zealand. So what was that like? Did you reach out to him, or did you know about him before you went out there?
Yeah, so we've known about each other for a few years because it's he's like the Thomas Keller of New Zealand, like South and North Island. He has restaurants all through the country, and people would always tag me in his restaurants, and then vice versa. They would always tag him in like fighting things because they didn't know. They see Josh Emmett. He is just I think his middle name. We have the same middle name.
Oh, no
James.
way.
So it's Joshua
Whoa.
James Emmett, but
I don't buy it.
he spells
crazy.
his last name is with 1 M, where mine is
Okay.
mine is 2.
Okay.
But it's it was just funny, and yeah, so I knew like a long time ago, I was like, one day I'm going to go to Australia, I'm going to go to New Zealand, and I'm going to meet him. I'm going to eat at all his restaurants. And then it's just like manifested that when I was doing some of the, I don't think it's ESPN, is it TSN or something over there in Australia, but I was doing a news outlet in New Zealand, and I was talking about that. So he actually reached out to the reporter and stuff like that. And then I just hit him up on Instagram, and I want to check out your restaurant. So we literally ate at all of his spots on like the South Island. We went to Waiheke Island when we got to the North Island and ate at another spot. And then we actually had dinner at his like really popular restaurant with him and his wife. And I met his kids because they were big fans. And it was cool. Like such a good guy. And they come out to LA and stuff and Napa all the time. So he's like, oh, next time we're out here, we'll hit you guys up and meet up.
That's amazing. No, that's a great experience, and I do love the fact that the kids have become fans of yours, because that is cool. It's like, oh, that's my dad's name. I might as well see what this guy's all about and start rooting for him. But that's got to be so cool, man. I mean, and first of all, New Zealand. I mean, I've just heard nothing but amazing things about the natural beauty out there, and I mean that's what they filmed Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
So
yeah, we saw like we did this Dart River, and we saw the what was the Mount
Doom or what? Oh, Isengard.
Isengard.
Ooh.
Yeah, so we drove by it, and like my friends, well, Johnny and Felice, they came with Vanessa and I on the last leg of the trip, and then Vanessa and I stayed on Waiheke Island. It's like it's like Napa on a tropical island, so that's like our scene. They left, and they actually went to Hobbiton. Yeah, yep. Hobbiton. So because they wanted to see all like their big Lord of the Ring fans, and so they drove like 3 hours to go see that before they flew out the next day. And Vanessa and I are like, we'll stay here and just drink some wine and eat some lamb.
Well, that's amazing. They could have watched Lord of the Rings on the way there, and they would have seen it, so it would have been pretty perfect. Well, one of them, just one of the films. But so yeah, no, I was going to say I'm not at all a nerd. I don't know anything about Lord of the Rings, even though I'm answering every question you're asking about it. But no, that's amazing. And like I say, I mean, that was one of the few things was they said, where are we going to film a lot of this stuff at? Where can we have this sort of natural stuff? And like New Zealand, the director, I think it was Peter Jackson had said, why not just stay in New Zealand? And it was one of those things where it made a lot of sense. And that's so cool that so they had built this sort of Hobbit, town where they filmed a lot of scenes at. And I guess so it's still there. It's still, I mean, that's awesome. But
and it's unfortunate that you can't stay in them now, but they're going to open it up to where people can actually stay in the little houses. So it's like my buddy's a huge fan of Lord of the Rings, and yeah. So,
you're probably going to have like a padded helmet or something.
Everyone calls me,
they're pretty small, right? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They're
that.
Very short, things there. So yeah, but
crouched down, but it is weird. Like New Zealand, it's like, I don't know if you've ever been to the Grand Canyon, but it's like when you look at it, it looks fake. It looks like just like a backdrop, and that's how a lot of things in New Zealand looked, and I even say that with Alaska, certain parts of Sitka that we've been to, it just like you're just looking around and it looks fake but it's so beautiful and everything's like perfect, and it's
because you guys travel a lot. I see after a fight, if you're in another country, you're hanging out there for a good week to 2 weeks, but might as well, right?
Yeah.
Does the UFC, do they pay for the initial flight and they pay for the flight home, but what if you how does that work?
Yeah, so it's they pay for my flight, so they'll pay for my flight, and typically like one coach, so I have to cover all the other ones, and then so my
not even two coaches,
no,
even if you're the main event,
not main event, yeah, it's
so if you're the main event, you get more than one.
I got two extra. No, you don't. You get it's always you and one coach, and then I think for the Perth one, I got two coaches, I believe, so I only had pay for a few more, but then I'm paying for my wife. I'm paying for, just a lot of stuff goes with the dietitian, everything. So it's a lot, but so I told them I wanted to leave like a month later or 5 weeks later after the fight, but out of like Auckland, out of New Zealand. And we were on the west coast of Perth. So it's like, it's a long trip over there, and they kind of weren't too happy about that, but then they made it happen. And then I just booked Vanessa's flight, like the one way that they booked me. But yeah, no, it was fun, and we always stay, especially like that. That was, I would like to just stay local. I want to fight in Vegas, and hopefully they come back to SAC and fight here. But other than that, I'm done with kind of traveling, especially. Yeah, I would have went anywhere, fight anyone for that opportunity, but then it's just it's tough, especially with the weight cut and and just time change and just everything about it. So I would like to just fight in Vegas, or at least on the West Coast.
So how's your weight cut now? As I remember back in the day, it was pretty tough, right?
Yeah, and I was fighting at 55s too for you.
Yeah. So how is that? I mean, because the UFC, they have a dietitian, they have the
PI.
The PI. So it's different, right? You're all dialed in. They give you your meals. Or how does that work now?
Yeah, so I think for them, like the UFC, the Performance Institute is great, and I think what the team does there, like they have nutritionists and stuff like that will help with the weight cut. They'll help with diet, things like that, supplementation, and I think it's great if people don't know what they're really doing, but everyone's different. So what will work for Tim won't necessarily work for you, So it's kind of I have my own dietitian. It's one of I think the best dietitians in the world.
Who is that? We got to give them a shout out, right?
Yeah, it's Perfecting Athletes. So they
where are they out of?
Man, all over the place. Right. Florida, Connecticut, Denver. They have a team, and they're amazing. So they used to be the main dietitian for the U.S. boxing team. They work with a lot of world champion boxers, like the best of the best, and then they're just amazing. So it's like all fight camp. I'm following their plan, and then as we get a little closer, then they're almost checking in daily, if not, multiple times a week, just about energy levels, like where's my weight at, how I feel, just everything about it, and then we'll kind of manipulate.
Could choose the UFC if you wanted that. If you wanted,
oh yeah, I could, and it would be free. But I just
you just feel more comfortable with these guys.
Yeah, I feel way more comfortable with them, and it's kind of it's just nice. They're great people, and it's like a concierge service. So I do that all fight camp, and then the fight week, they come out, and it's just making me all my just everything.
And you got to pay for their flight, right?
Yeah, flight, hotel, juices, supplementation. Like make all my meals. They're just fun people to be around too. There's so many of them, like Paulina, Dr. Michelle, Denise. They do body work, like acupuncture. It's all about just being around good people and just like not being stressed out. They monitor the weight cut, and I thought I really knew what I was doing, and then like I met them, and it's a completely different level. Like I've gained so much knowledge, and just like, oh man, I wish I had them, like, since I was wrestling in college. Like,
did you have were they around when you fought in Australia?
Yeah,
so they came out to Australia.
Yeah, for 2 weeks. Yeah, so that's
that's an expensive trip.
And then that's where going back to all the stuff that it just when you're gross money looks good, but then it's like I was out there 2 weeks in advance, and it was like all the Airbnbs for the coaches and just everything. It's like all on my dime.
I can't believe they don't pay for your coaches, your flights for all your coaches, and a place for them to stay. Yeah. Even 2 weeks before.
It's just fight week, and you typically main event you'll get 2 rooms for main event, like hotel rooms, but that's just fight week. It's like Tuesday or whatever. If I say I'm coming in early, they'll typically pay Monday to Sunday. They're pretty good with me on that, but it's just tough. A lot of times it's you and one coach, so it's like I always have to come out of pockets for the other coaches in main events and title fights. You get 4, so it's like I have to fly out.
They should cover all 4. I mean, that's a shame. But I hope if Dana ever listens to this, which he could, you never know. But
come on the show, talk about it, Dana.
Yeah, I feel like I was like the C+ version of Dana White, right? But I feel like if I had the funds, the sponsorship, the TV deals, there was a lot of stuff I would do different if I were in the leading the UFC. But at the same time, it's like he's created, like 20, 30 years ago, you'd be making 5 and 5.
Yeah.
So
but it's also the fastest growing sport in the world. I think it's like one of the most like worldwide. It's like
everyone wants to fight. Everyone wants to see a fight.
It's so well known, and it's like the money is there, and they profit a lot. So it's like I just even going back and talking to like some of the performance bonuses, I just wish it was more of a substantial amount of money, so it's like it should be okay, we're doing 3 performance bonuses, $250,000. That actually means something instead of $50,000, because at the end of the day, okay, I lost my last fight, but I got a fight of the night. I don't give a damn about the fight of the night bonus, because if I got my win bonus, I make over 2 times that. You know what I mean? So it's like,
but if he just gave away something, folks, about his
6 figures. but it's just I don't know.
It's a shame. It's
Yeah.
a shame. You shouldn't have to worry about money
Or main
at this
events,
stage.
like you should get, I think, a different type of, maybe a bigger pay. But that's my opinion.
Do you
And
get a percentage of pay-per-view at all?
no?
No.
Only champions do if it's in their
Really?
contract. Yeah.
Wow. Because that's where the money is, right?
But it's tough because it's on a tiered system, so you have to sell over it's like 400, 500 pay-per-views, and a lot of them won't do that. You know what I mean? Because they get their money from the ESPN deal, or Disney, pays them ESPN. So it's like they're already getting paid. Like, it doesn't matter at the end of the day. They want more pay-per-view buys, but only the superstar like Connor, Nate, like all these guys will draw 500 plus, 1,000 pay-per-view buys.
And that's the problem.
And a lot of people stream illegally, so it's
We don't do that.
We've never done that.
Yeah, right.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Why would you do that? Yeah.
No, and that's funny because we've heard a couple guys talking about just coaching and how non-lucrative it is and things like that. And I'm thinking of, to myself, like, you're talking about having to pay for a couple coaches to come out with you. And luckily you're in that position, because I think, I'm seeing some of these guys that are struggling where they probably couldn't even afford to take their other coaches, meaning that their coaches are probably having to pay their own way to coach their guys in the ring. So, I mean, it has to be a labor of love. You really got to be into coaching if you're really going to do this. So, and I'm wondering too, because we're talking about, earlier about how, like, judges, like, it's very strange to me how you see some of these judges, you're like, you've never fought a day in your life. How do you know, like, that person's hit is so much harder than that? Yeah. Like, I don't know why a lot of former fighters who do retire quite young for the most part don't get into that, because I think that's something that seems to me at least a little more stable. I don't know what they get paid per fight, but I would think that you're constantly able to go to different fights and work there. You probably have a little bit more freedom than you would coaching, where you have to go with the particular fighter. You have to do that. And refs, too. I wonder why you don't see a lot more refs, former fighters that go into that, because I think that's a way to stay around the game, to stay there, and to, potentially, like you say, if you're doing those kind of jobs, you're probably actually getting some more benefits and things like that, too. I mean, do you...
Yeah, no, and I know for the judges, it's they're just by the athletic commission, and you look at a lot of these judges, what have they been judging most of their career? Boxing. So they don't know anything about MMA. So you look around and you see the judges like, okay, boxing. It's like, so then if you just start pumping your jab out there and you're landing more stuff, then of course you're going to score more on their scorecards. But it's like grappling exchanges, kicks, takedowns that maybe
Control,
they don't really, they
yeah.
don't know. They're boxing judges by nature. So I feel like that is tough. And then going back to like the referees, it's like, I do think a lot of fighters should go into judging and refereeing, but they're by the commission, and I think they get paid like $1,000 a show. I think it's
so
something like that.
much, yeah.
It
But so they
depends
can
on
bounce
their
around.
how many tickets get sold.
But even the UFC, I want to, I don't know, like maybe some of the more popular refs may get paid a little more, but I almost want to say it's like it's not that much, $1,000, maybe $2,000, but it's
Get
like
what you pay for.
yeah, but then they can bounce around, or they're doing that every single weekend, or maybe they're going to Bellator on Thursday and then they fly to the UFC, so they can make a few $1,000 a week, really just for 2 events. And like, you do that all the time, it adds
That's
up.
what I'm thinking. I mean, if you're making $1,000 for an event, you're only really technically working for like 3-4 hours.
Yeah.
You're making $250 an hour. I mean, that's a pretty good thing there.
Our fights are going,
but they
6,
can't
7
like
hours.
yeah, or there's one a week, or you're flying all over the world.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, to make that. And it's like, and then going back to like the coaching, it's like I feel like a lot of the coaches, they invest their time in their fighter early on. It's like they're not making anything, but it's like the fighter's still paying for their coaches, because the coaches aren't going to pay out of pocket, because they're not making a whole lot as it is. And so it's like they're not going to pay out of pocket to go travel with them, but they have like gone on long road trips, or maybe just that fighter only he uses his one flight, for him and a coach. So you'll see one person in the corner, and then you have a room, and they're just kind of bundled up. And even when I made my debut, it's like we were in the Netherlands, and it was such a tiny room. I'd never been to Europe. I didn't realize how small the beds were, and there were like 2 twin beds, and I was like, damn, it was like this countertop is longer than our room was. So even that, like, if I would have lost my debut, I would have lost a shit ton of money. Like, I would have been in the hole. But luckily, I won. I got 12-12 for my first one, and that was more than standard was like 10-10, but I took it on such short notice. So but I had to pay for so many flights. So I paid for, I think it was like 2 coaches, and a trip to Amsterdam on 4-day notice was like $3,500. So I paid for 2 coaches, my wife. I paid for my best friend, because all the time that he let us live and me pursue this, I'm like, I'm paying for you. He's like, no, I'll get it. I said, no. But even just in flights, I would have been in the hole.
Jeez.
And then I had to get extra rooms and stuff. So I think after it was all said and done, I think I only made like $3,000 or $2,000. I got to actually take home.
More at West Coast.
No,
should have stayed with us.
Should have stayed with
us. I would have made more for that if I,
You were scared.
But
you were scared of West
scared of-
Coast.
But I hear this story all the time with UFC guys. They're always struggling for money. They're taking on part-time jobs. And these guys are the top of the sport. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't understand it. Like I said before, you shouldn't have to worry about money ever again. Like straight up, unless you. I mean, if you're done with your money, like a lot of these NBA guys and rookie NFL are buying Ferraris and Lamborghini. You know, but as far as if you position yourself right, you're good with your money. In your position where you are at in your profession as a professional athlete, you shouldn't have to worry about money, and it's a shame that you have to worry about that.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like I'm smart with my money. It's like I know what I want. Like you'll never see me, buying something. Even if I wouldn't buy a Ferrari. I drive a Honda Accord, and it's like it's a hybrid, and it's like I paid that thing off after my fight. Just because. It's still a nice car, and people like, why didn't you get a Tesla? I was like, I could have bought a Tesla for what I paid for that damn thing. But I paid that thing off. It's like, I know what I want. And it's like, I don't know. It is tough. It's frustrating, but it's, this is kind of what I chose. And I hope things can change, or, maybe I get bigger contracts or whatnot moving forward.
So I got a question for you. We ask almost all the fighters this question now. We had Lance Palmer on here. We had Anthony Hernandez, Max Griffin, a plethora of UFC guys. But Lance Palmer, right? You know Lance very well. Mm-hmm. You guys trained together for a while. So he went on a different path, right? He chose World Series of Fighting, which is now PFL, basically for the money. Let's be honest. They had the $1 million prize. If you had the choice to go in the PFL, see, here's the problem with PFL. Not everyone knows Lance Palmer. But a lot of people know Josh Emmett now because of your fame, 3 main events. At the end of the day, would you rather have the money or the legacy of being a UFC?
Money, yeah.
That's what Danny said it like that.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, and I say this all the time, it's like I don't give a damn if I'm fighting in front of sold out $20,000-$30,000 arena or 30,000 fans in the arena with like millions of people around the world watching. I'll fight someone in a basement if they're paying me more money. I don't care, because at the end of the day, like I know what I want. I'm happy, and with money, it makes everything that much easier.
But I feel like Lance, talking to him, he loves his Lamborghini. He loves the $2 million he won with the 2 tournaments and the
other money
the
and
fight
sponsors
purse and all that. But I feel like, I don't know. I mean, you were there. I feel like he wants a taste of the UFC. He wants it because I think when you look back on your career, what you've done is amazing. I mean, a main event. I think you're in the middle of it, but when you look back, there is a part of that you can't put a price tag on that, right? But maybe you can.
Yeah, I don't know. Everyone's different, but for me, like I've always said it, it's like this is work to me. It's like there's some people that get into it because they want the fame and they want to be the popular and stuff. Like I don't give a damn about that. Like I want to just go in and make my money, and like I have my friends, I have my family, and like I would rather just go make as much money as possible and just sail off in the sunset and no one know who I am. Whereas you get that, that fame like Nate and Connor and stuff like that. And it's like they're superstars, especially Connor. He can't go anywhere. That would suck. Like I would absolutely hate that. And I've always said that about A-list celebrities, that you can't go outside. It's like, you know what I mean? You have paparazzi and everyone, like these guys can't go eat out with their family. They can't do anything. Like that would be horrible. But that's what you sign up for. But for me, I'll choose the money all day.
But I feel like those guys, the 0.002%, the Nate Diaz, the Conor McGregor, they have the legacy and the money. I feel that is like the the ultimate, right? But that's so rare. Conor is such a personality. It's insane. I was watching him on the Ultimate Fighter show. He's nuts, but everyone loves him. He comes in anywhere he goes. He relates to everyone. He's a very special personality that I don't think anyone's ever seen in the UFC and professional sports.
But he can't enjoy any time that
he's got that yacht.
No, but you see that though. But you see the good videos but you also see the bad ones when he like freaks out on people.
He has to have a team of security around him everywhere he goes.
Yeah, you can't do anything. So you're on the boat in the middle of the in the middle of the ocean with like just your friend. You can do how long you can do that every day? Like he can't go out and do certain things. You know what I mean? Like you have to have a big team with you. And it's like
we had Tom Brady Sr. on the show. And it was the same thing. Like he was. Remember, he's talking about Tiger Woods. How Tiger? He's like he asked himself. This is before Tommy, was a A-list celebrity. He's like, why does Tiger have this big ass yacht? Like, why does he need this yacht? And then as Tommy got more and more Super Bowls, and he's like, okay, I get it now.
Yeah,
because he can go on this thing, and everyone leaves him alone. Yeah, he can't go get his, like you said. Get gas.
Can't do anything. You can't do anything.
Do it for you.
Yeah.
But sometimes you want to like go to the mall. But I don't feel too bad for those. I don't feel bad for Conor McGregor, Nate Diaz, Tom Brady. Sorry, Tommy, but
to a certain, you just can't. It's like it's different because you can't. You're like almost like not that you're in like prison or trap, but you can't do. You can't go to restaurants. You can't do anything. You literally can't do anything. So I don't think I would personally would never want that. But I know some people get into the sport because they want that. They want the fame more than anything. It's like I just want some money, and then
I think Conor wants that.
Fame. Yeah.
I think Conor wants that. Nate maybe a little bit. Tommy, no, I don't think he didn't want that at all.
Yeah,
but. He's doing all right.
Yeah.
There could be worse lives to live, but
if I had that kind of money, Tom Brady money and stuff like that, and the fame, I think I might be all right too. But
no, I find it interesting because I always think that with guys like you and other fighters, UFC was the goal. It wasn't a matter of money. It wasn't a matter of that. Just that's where I want to be because that's the big leagues. So thinking back now. Should UFC have been the goal, or should it have been maybe to stay a little bit more regional and maybe find another spot where you could have made a little more money? You think, or was
but with that it was hard.
He's getting so flustered.
See what happened? Hard hitting questions here, folks. Hard hitting on the mic.
With that it was tough because I've been in the UFC. May will be 8 years. There was Bellator. Obviously, Bellator was around. Like other than that, there wasn't.
I think World Series just started, maybe a year after that.
Really, but they weren't paying people. No, that was just they weren't paying anything. So there wasn't really anything. All these things. I think it's all about timing, and especially when they're, it's just tough. Like it's tough to say. And I always wanted to fight in the UFC because it was the biggest, best platform in the world, and it is the biggest platform in the world, and they take care of their fighters. I'm talking about like the production, the behind the scenes stuff is on another level. There's no organization that can compete with that.
I'm offended.
Besides West Coast, but there's no one like you go to some of these other big organizations, and it West Coast was better than these other big organizations. In the back rooms, there's nothing, But the UFC, literally everything. Like it's insane what they do, like behind the scenes stuff. Like nobody can compete with that. But then it's like the money is just the thing that just like. Unless people like have fought at a high level, they have no idea. Like I don't know, they just don't understand what goes into this. And then there's really no security too. That's a little scary too at the end of the day. And it's like, and then you do worry about your health and all these things. And after like your fighting career, but like I feel fine. But then it's like, even going back to my last fight, I lost, and I saw some journalists saying like, oh, the coaches should have threw in the towel and stuff. And I'm like at no point. Like I wasn't rocked. Like optically, it looks bad. Like I'm super light skin. I don't have like hair on my head or my face that's distracting people. It's like I have scar tissue. I get hit, I cut, and I bleed, and it's like, and then it just looks bad. Any 3-round or 5-round fight that I fought the whole thing, I look horrible after. And it's like it's just what it is. Like I wasn't rocked. Like my coaches know me, and I was saying I was coming out because I still have a chance every round. I'm like I'm trying to finish the fight, and it's like, isn't this what the fans want to see? Isn't this what the UFC? It's like in the fourth round, the doctor was in there and the fans were booing like crazy because they thought maybe they'd stop it. And I was like, no, let me fight, you know? And then like they went crazy, and it's like, that's what it's all about. And it's like, I'm trying to, you know, win because I'm trying to get my other check too. You know what I mean? It's like, it's just tough.
And I feel like you're one of those fighters that as a promoter, right? I put my promoter's hat on. You've come a long way, right? But you don't really like talking crap and kind of building up a fight with your mouth, right? Like you're just one of those guys that I'm gonna go in the cage and fight. And when you get in the cage, it's insane, right? No one ever says anything about your fighting style. But has the UFC, have they like coached you? Have they like given you a little nudge, like, hey, we want you to do this more? Or I feel like you've kind of grown into that, like, because you get the game, right? You gotta say certain things. But I feel like I saw you in the cage. I think it was the fourth round. I'm not forget when it was in your last fight, and you put your hands in the crowd, and I'm like, I've never seen Josh really do that when he fought for me, right? And I feel like there's an evolution of you understand it now. It's like it's more than just fighting, right? It's that persona. Has that bothered you at all, or like you know what I'm saying?
No, yeah. And it's the same. Like I know we're in the entertainment business, and that's why like I know what the fans want to see, what Dana and the brass want to see, but that's why I stand up and try to knock these people out. You know what I mean? Because that people want to see boxing on their feet. You know, they don't want to see people just take them down and ground and pound them, submit them. But it's tough that like I don't know my opponent, so I'm not going to talk shit about them, or like I don't know what they're going through. It's just not me. Like, and one of the things, like, I would hype a fight. Like I would do a lot more if it benefited me. If it doesn't benefit me at all. I'm the main event. I have my purse. It doesn't benefit me at all. So when they ask me, hey, will you do this or this? I'm like, no, I'm good. If it's not in my contract, I'm not going to do it. It's not in my like fight week obligations. Like, why would I go do that? Because it's not going to benefit me at all. I could care less if, you know.
Well, if you're getting pay-per-view buys, then it's okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, if it then it benefits me.
Yeah.
Then I'll do it all day. Then I'll play the game and I'll do more. But none of the stuff has never benefited me. So I'm like, I'm not going to go out of my way and hype something that I don't like reap the reward. You know, so it's I don't know.
Well, one thing for sure, you definitely bring a warrior mentality, and that's one thing here. You know, you're talking about you got blood coming all over your face, whatever, just smacking all around, and you're just like, yeah, let's do it. I want to do this. I want to fight, and I think that's something you clearly have to succeed at that level. Is that you cannot just simply say, I don't know, I'm a little nicked up. Maybe I should wait till the next fight. You know, like I think it's important to kind of put it all out there in every fight, and I think that's one thing you do. I also think it's interesting you're talking about, you know, how it's hard for you to talk shit. You know, I was just sitting here thinking that, you know, if you were in pro wrestling, you'd be the perfect baby face. That's what they call the good guys, because you wouldn't be saying like, oh no, you know, he did good in there, just eat your vitamins, do well. You know, you wouldn't be the heel. You wouldn't be comfortable really, I think, you know, ripping people apart and being mean to them. It doesn't sound like you. And I did want to say, speaking of wrestling, like I was thinking of our first few fights that you had at West Coast Fighting as basically jobbers. That's what we used to call people that you knew who was going to win that fight, you know, kind of thing. And so it's kind of interesting. You mentioned that they were kind of easy. I'm glad you did that, because I didn't want to throw it out there, because I know fighting is never truly easy. Yeah. Unless you're dealing with someone who just basically runs into a guillotine for you, which I think I might have seen once or twice. So,
just once,
right? But that's what I'm saying. I mean, that to me was one of the things I'm like, I don't think I've ever seen anyone jump into a guillotine before.
He wanted out, so he's like, "Here's my neck." But
right.
But that's the thing. I'm like, you have to develop. It's like, okay, my first 2 pro fights or 3 pro fights, but they had a lot of competition, like that Noah Schnabel, even though he was a gamer, but he had like, for my 3rd pro fight, I think he was like 5-12 or something.
Yeah, he had a lot of
But still,
fights.
he had a lot of like experience, but still. But then after that, I fought a Dean Duenas, and like he was undefeated. He was a Pac-10 champion and all that. Like, and he was like, that was the first like competitive fight. Then you just get a little, you know, step up in competition each time, I think, you know. So to develop as a fighter, and then you have to take tough fights, I say, before you get in the big show. Otherwise someone's going to get in there. But people have different mindsets. Like some people just want to be a UFC fighter. Like if they just want to get to the show and go 0-2 out, they're okay because they were a UFC fighter. I'm like, that means nothing to me personally. That'd be a waste of my time. Like I think if you're only doing this to step foot in the octagon, like who gives a damn? Like nobody cares about that. You know what I mean? It's like you should be trying to be the best, or and that's the thing. Like I really don't care about a damn belt. It's just like there's more money with the fights and stuff, and I know it's life changing. I want it to be the best fighter on the planet, but then all the opportunities that come with it. So Pay-per-view. It's like that's still a goal of mine. It's like even though I'm getting older in age, I still feel the best I've ever felt, and I have my the right team around me now. So I'm like dialed in, and it's like I'm still ranked 6th in the world. So there's a lot can change in a year. I want to fight possibly one more this year or early next year sometime. So we'll kind of see, within a year if I put 2 big wins together, and there's maybe you never know what happens in this. I can step in, take a short notice. I've never turned a fight down, so I'm pretty easy to work with too.
Well, I feel like your wins are insane. They're not just, they're very memorable. They're knockouts, they're bloody fights. I was just going to ask you, as a tip of my tongue, where does Josh Emmett go from here? And he answered my question right before I asked it. But I feel like you're still on a mission, right? Still, because you are so close, right? Like you're right there. What do you think is going to put you over the edge? Do you feel just putting it together, or is there? When I look at you, and trust me, I'm not a fighter. I've never been a fighter. But I feel like I'd like to see, and I'm probably the only one that's going to say this because no one else wants to see this, is I feel like I want to see more of your wrestling. Like you're an amazing wrestler. What do you think needs to happen, right? Because you're at the top, 1% of all fighters in the world, right? What do you think needs to tweak to get to that next level, to get the belt?
Yeah.
Oh, there he gave the right hook.
He was about to put it in a rear naked choke on that.
Yeah, I know.
He was so pissed.
This
I said I
right
want him to
here.
wrestle.
Yeah, right. No, I don't know. I think it is, and maybe I just need to mix it all together, and it will come out. But I don't know. Sometimes I don't know really, But I can do it all, So it's like we literally, just depending on the game plan and stuff like that, and maybe I should have used my wrestling a lot more in a handful of fights, but
because you have that right hook that's
if I start taking people
incredible.
down or feints, and then get them worried about the takedown, and then change levels, and
because everyone's worried about that right hook.
Yeah.
Everyone that fights you now knows it's coming, and they couldn't stop it. Like was it Michael Johnson, right? I forgot to tell you this. I ran into him in where was I at? I was in Cancun at the airport in Mexico.
Oh, okay.
And I look over at him and I recognize him. I'm like, hey, he's like, we kind of recognize each other. I think he had a fight or something like that. But I'm like, yeah, I was West Coast Fighting Championship. Josh Emmett was my champion. And he's like, oh man, that mother effer, But he smiled, He's like, that guy's got a right, a strong right. And I feel like everyone is deathly scared of that right hook. And when I see you fight, I'm like, man, I know what you're capable of, right? And again, like, who am I, right? I've watched, put on regional fights for a few years, but I feel like you're so close, and I don't know what it is, right? I'm not a coach, but I feel like they know that right hook's coming, and I know you have so much more. Is there something? What do you think? I mean, is there something that you're like, maybe I should wrestle more, or is it just land the right hook, or what? Yeah.
No. In certain fights and stuff like that, like obviously we've gone over things, and just like there's definitely a lot of things that should have done different, but it's I don't know. I've just kind of fell in love with just standing on my feet and striking and stuff like that too. But and I need to kind of possibly get back to my old ways and stuff like that, because people have no idea. They watch any of my fights in the UFC. I've only taken a few shots, you know what I mean? Other than that, and it's like I can wrestle, I can grapple really well, and
but you're right. People want to see the right hook. everyone. I mean, I'm the very rare, but like, hey, I want to see you wrestle more. No one says that, but I feel like you're such an elite wrestler. I feel it would open up that right hook, right? If they have something else to prepare for. But like I said, who the hell am I? I don't know shit.
Yeah, you know about as much as the average UFC judge does. So yeah, I was gonna say you have as much experience as they do.
I've watched a lot of fights,
right.
but
like I said, as much as them. Yeah, you're perfect.
Maybe I should be a UFC judge.
Right. I do want to ask this. It's getting down to business, but I did see that at one point you had signed a 4-fight contract, and I do believe the 4th fight is coming up. Right? Is there one more left on that contract, or is there?
Yeah. I signed a 5-fight deal. It was before the Cater fight last June. I had 2 more fights, and they wanted to sign a new deal.
Okay, so you got a few more coming.
I did a 5-fight deal, so I have 2 left.
Okay,
2 left on this contract. So,
and then after that, we'll see where things go. Yeah. But I just wanted to make sure I didn't know if maybe you had the last one coming up. But I do have to ask something very hard hitting, and that is, if you did not shave your head, what color would your hair be? Because I've never.
Blonde.
You're a blondie, okay? So I don't know.
It's dirty blonde. It's kind of weird. All the hair on my body is blonde, but the roots of my beard are like red.
Well, that's what I was wondering. I didn't know if maybe we had fire crotch issues going on over here or something like that. But yeah, no, because I was just curious. I've always seen you with that head, and I'm like, man, what's this guy hiding over here? What kind of hair? Like maybe if you grow it out, you'll have these beautiful flowing locks or something,
Should come out to the next flight with cornrows.
It's just my
He-Man.
Yeah, right. Just let it go.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I look like Bozo the Clown. It's like. It's thinning upstairs. I could grow some hair out on the sides of my head, but
nice.
not
well, you're very distinguished looking.
Yeah, right.
Well, we want to thank you for coming on the show. Yeah. I'm glad I didn't have that bourbon before, but coming on here, I was not a little emotional, but it's like, man, this is my guy that we fought. We've been through the trenches together.
Jeez, kiss him already. Jeez.
Yeah. and it's just been awesome to see you. On the main event, it's just so awesome to watch. I mean, my family, all my staff, we're all so excited for you. And it's been a crazy journey, and we're back in a bar talking about the good old days. So I just, I know you have all kinds of obligations, and it means a lot to us that you come and talk to us. And we're happy to have you here. So thank you for coming. And the next time you're going to come here, you're going to bring the UFC belt.
Yeah,
buddy. I like it. That sounds good.
All right.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Josh.
Thanks again for everything, you guys. I appreciate it.
Cool.
Thank you again.
All right.
Thanks for watching 2 Bees in a Pod. Make sure you subscribe, like, comment, share, and thank you for all the love and support.